Hi, everyone. My name is Valeria Popov, and I would like to talk about overeating and food addiction. And I'm going to be talking with Dr. Vera Tarman. She is an addiction specialist. So, would you introduce yourself and tell a bit more what you do?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I'm Dr. Vera Tarman. As Valerie said, I'm an addiction specialist. What I can contribute to this conversation is to talk about the addictive nature of some foods and how that plays a role in people when they're trying to eat well or when they're trying to be on a diet and they keep slipping and falling back. I want to really show that it's got really very little to do with willpower and a lot to do with the food that what you might be eating. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. And for me, I used to struggle with overeating. And for me, what I was kind of an eye-opening thing for me that before I thought that, I'm overeating because I'm stressed, I'm overeating because some other complications and issues in my life. And I always thought that to deal with overeating, to actually stop overeating, you kind of want to go and deal with why you're doing it. But then I discovered that is very not true, and that's how I stopped. That having right tools, you don't have to go and deal with it. You can just stop. But it's nice to go and deal with it, of course.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, let me talk about that. The reason why people think that is because there's different ways that people can have disordered eating, and there's a very strong history of just comfort eating. People eating because food makes them feel numb and comfortable, and it eases pain. And there's truth to that. So people think, well, if I can make the pain go away, then I won't need to do the food. So that's there's truth to that. And then there's a whole history of eating disorders where people say I have binge eating disorder or bulimia because of some psychic distress and have to deal with that. And a lot of psychologists will support that model. The reason why I think the addiction paradigm is so useful is those two pieces are true, but there's also another piece, which is that it's just the food itself. And in food addiction, in the work that I do, I see people who are happy, mad, sad, glad, everything, and they're still eating and struggling with their food. And they may deal with their psychic distress, but they're still wanting to eat. And it's not just enough to look at the psychic distress. In fact, the way that I look at it is that people need to deal with the psychic distress later in order to maintain sobriety. First, you got to get sober, and then there's the whole life of living sober from these foods, and that's where you want to deal with those psychic distress so you don't keep picking up. So, but the number one step in the addiction paradigm is you have to stop the drug, because you won't be able to deal with the psychic distress if you're drugged. It's like asking the alcoholic when they're drunk to deal with their issues. They can't because they're too drunk to. And a person may say, I'm not drunk on my food, but yes, you are. Like you're muffled from you're not able to use your emotions in the way that they're meant to be used. You don't have the clarity of mind. You may not realize it until you've had some months of sobriety, and then you'll go, oh my God, the food really did alter my mind. And when your mind is altered, you can't deal with that psychic distress. So the first thing is put down the food. And the people who say, well, I have to deal with my stresses, no, you don't. In the addiction model, we say, it's just like, if you're smoking cigarettes, you can't wait until, your marriage and your job and everything is perfect. You can't. You quit. And the good news is after 2 or 3 weeks of quitting, you don't want to smoke anymore. Like it passes. And the same thing happens with food. Then you can start dealing with your issues.
Yes.
That's the addiction model.
And sometimes what I notice that a lot of people don't even understand the issue until they quit, and then all kind of the issues
exactly
come out, and that's when you deal with it.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the other thing. Once a person stops eating that stuff, then they discover that they have a lot more issues than they even knew that they already knew they had them. But now it's like, oh my God, I have even more. Because food has been numbing that whole level. Like you were saying in your work, you're discovering that this is much more common of an issue than you thought. And I actually think it's the underbelly of a lot of society. We learn how to uh, 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 put away stresses by eating, shopping, watching TV, all sorts of things. And when you take those away, now we have all these emotions that we've never learned how to deal with. So we got to stop the food or the drug, whatever it is, and then okay, here's all these emotions. Expect them, and that's not something that you value with in your work. You can't do that. You can. It would be your job to say, here are some issues. Now this is where you go to your therapist, but I'm going to help you stay sober from the food,
Right.
and direct you to what is good to eat.
Right.
Like you as a worker with people will have to. I mean, don't take that upon yourself. That is a whole other piece of the big puzzle.
Right.
In the work that I did in the addiction field, like I work in a treatment center, and we had we had cocaine, we had crack, we had alcoholics, and then we had the food people. And what ended up happening, which was so interesting, is the alcoholics and all those people, they got clean, and then they had food still because they didn't identify food as an issue. They then went to eating food, whereas the food addicts couldn't use food. And they were the ones that were suffering the most out of the whole lot because they didn't have the last frontier, which is food. So we are working on the last frontier of emotional distress and emotional management. It's very hard work.
Yeah.
Very hard work.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you mentioned like the food is the groups that it's very interesting because food, it's like, I mean, you can quit food. You can stay away from alcohol, drugs, but the food you eat a day, multiple times a day.
Yes, that's right. That's right. But you and I both know it's not all food. It's processed food.
Yes.
It's the sugars. It's the processed flours. The processed carbs. It's not the unrefined real vegetables, real foods. Those are fine. It's the industrialized, pre-digested stuff. That's the stuff that makes us that makes us high, that gives us a buzz, and that's what we have to stop. Yeah,
and that's like what my second question is about, like the difference in between overeating and food addiction, and what is the food addiction actually is.
Yeah, well, they both will look the same because one person is overeating and you don't know why they are, and if it's a food addiction, it's because there's been a chemical. I mean, it's a substance out of my body that I put into my body that then creates this urge to have more of it. It's like if I'm a smoker and I've quit smoking and I start smoking, it's going to inspire what we call the phenomena of craving. So I'm going to want more cigarettes, or in this case, more sugar. And like I said, even if I'm happy, sad, glad, happy, doesn't matter. If I don't eat it, I don't want it. And if I do eat it, I want it. An overeater is somebody who they're using the food for comfort. And when they're not unhappy, when they're fine, they don't want it. Like it's they can look the same, but they're not as driven by like they can have a little bit of cake and stop, or maybe they'll have the whole cake, but then they can stop tomorrow. Like the people who go to Weight Watchers and all of those programs, and for those people where it works, those are the overeaters. Those are not the food addicts. Because with food addiction, there's no such thing as moderation. You have a little bit and you want more.
Yeah.
It's like the controlled drinking programs. Some of those programs you can learn how to drink properly and you're good, but the alcoholic, no way. One drink of wine and they're off, and they may not have the bottle of wine the rest of the night, but they're wanting it. They're thinking about it. They're planning it. They're wishing, they're trying to plan, how can I figure out how to have the rest of that wine? And similarly here, you give the person a little bit of dessert, they go home and all they're thinking about is that big tub of ice cream in the freezer. And they just can't wait until everyone goes to bed so that they can have it. That's an addiction mentality. The overeater will look like that, but they can theoretically stop.
Right. And
personally, I think there's a lot more addiction than we're giving credit. I think so.
True. Well, for me, food addiction is it's a chemical addiction. It's what is in the food. It's by itself that makes you addicted
Yes.
to it. And if you have it, you're gonna be addicted to it
Yeah,
unless
exactly. Yeah. And what we mean by that is it inspires, you have a little bit, and then it awakens the phenomena of craving. Like it makes you want more. So the more you have, the more you want. And it doesn't end. And even when you're full, you still want it. It just continues and continues and continues.
right.
And yeah. Yeah. And I think it's going to get worse because the foods that we're eating are, from the food industry, they're deliberately making those foods addictive. And so the more you eat those addictive foods, the more likely you're going to become addicted. You know, you're not going to get addicted to a plate of Brussels sprouts. There's just nothing in that that's addictive. Even though it's carbs, it may be the same amount of carbs. It's not processed. It's not metabolized in the same way. It's not processed in the brain in the same way. I don't get addicted to carrots and Brussels sprouts unless I've developed it's possible in end stage food addiction, way down the line when things are so messed up in the brain that yes, you can get what's called a volume addiction of anything. You can eat too many celery sticks, but that's end stage. That's not common.
Right. So, Dr. Vera, what
Yeah.
what can we do? Like, how can we help people? Are there any tools people can
Yeah.
do?
So the most important tool, so your job would be to help the person, they're coming to you already identifying that they have a problem. And I would hope that your job is to provide some sort of food plan and some sort of direction of what's healthy. And then when you find that the person is struggling with that, try to determine, is this just overeating, and can I teach this person how to moderate their eating? Or is there this dynamic where they just keep eating something that they then get caught? So then your job will be, if this is a food addiction, what is the food, the chemical that's hidden in there? So that, it doesn't matter what food plan you are, whether you're vegan, whether you're keto, it doesn't matter. In all of the food plans, there's little sneaky hidden sugars in the bars and in the little packages of things that you can buy at the store that say keto special, it's no carb, but it's still got something in it that's addictive. And the same with the vegan stuff, it looks all very healthy, but there's still something in it. So it's going to be your job to say, okay, here's the food plan that you're using. Now you've got to make it clean of these foods, these chemicals, if you want to, they are literally chemicals, and take them out. That would be your job, Valerie. And then after that, the person goes, how do I live this way? And that's the emotional piece. And then that's where you say, okay, I'm going to help you stay on this food plan, but you have to now go and get support to stay on this food plan, because you're used to using a drug to deal with your emotions, and now you've got to do with it in a different way. So that would be, I guess the first thing you want to do is give a good solid food plan that's abstinent, and then support the person in that, and then help direct them to their, I guess, emotional issues. But you know what? A lot of those emotions get better once they're eating well. So you can give them hope that the next 3 weeks is going to be hell, but then you're going to feel better.
Right.
Once you get over the withdrawal, because essentially it's withdrawal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and like it can be something very easy. Some people don't even realize it can just be like the combination of like salt, sugar, and oil, or like salt and fat. It's something like that. It's very addictive. Not even like thinking about chemicals, but then like.
Yes, that's great.
It's really like difference for people.
Yeah, the very worst combination is sugar and refined carbs. Worst. I mean, salt, fat, and sugar is like that's the golden triangle. But sugar and simple carbs, the worst. You'll gain weight and you won't be able to stop eating.
Yeah, they trigger a lot of things too. So
absolutely. So I would say, first of all, just get rid of the sugar, any of the refined, obvious sugar. Then if you're still craving, then look and say, okay, where is the chemical that's getting me? For a lot of people, it's dairy. They have to stop dairy. A lot of people will have to stop simple carbs like rice. It's just too simple. They might have to go with the complex carbs, like the green vegetables. And it's different for everybody. So yeah, it's unfortunately it's simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any last piece of advice for people? What would you
Yeah.
give people?
What I would say is, if you first of all, you know, we have a really hard time getting around the idea that we're addicted to food. So we're both saying it's not foods, it's specific foods, it's industrialized processed foods. Give yourself a month, just 1 month of stopping that stuff, and see, chart it out every day. I mean, work with somebody. In fact, I don't think you should do it. This is a tool. Never do this stuff on your own, because the addictive mind will tell you that it's okay to have that stuff. And then the person like you will say, no, no, I'm telling you, for this month, listen to me. So just for 1 month, try, recognize that all of the negative feelings that you're feeling are just withdrawal, and that they will pass in about 2 to 3 weeks. Give yourself a month to see how you feel on week 4 and week 5, and then you can decide if you want to go back.
Right.
My message is, my last message, you know, to close this off, is just to say, you'll be amazed at how much better you're feeling if you give yourself that chance. And don't do the cheat, because the cheat day will only slow it down. Then you're going to need 2 months, not 1 month. You got to just do it.
Yes.
And don't do it alone. That's why we need you.
Yeah,
We
great
need people to
advice.
help
Yes,
us.
thank you. Thank you so much. Yes,
Okay.
I hope that will help people to actually step,
Yeah.
into the light and actually start doing it, not suffer by themselves, because this
Okay.
is
Perfect. Perfect. And if people have questions, we can do this again. Give me a couple of questions that people have given you, and we can address them as people
absolutely.
ask.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your
Okay.
generosity.
Okay.
Bye bye.